Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. My guest today is Mark Scherer, the founder and CEO of Encompass Life, a life coaching and leadership development academy. Known as the coach for coaches, Mark Scherer has had the pleasure of working with thousands of individuals, including executives, entrepreneurs, healthcare professionals, coaches, and leaders, enabling them to navigate the most challenging personal chapters of their lives. As a certified business mentor, Mark applies his many modalities to help businesses, groups, families, and individuals identify, clarify, align, and implement their highest visions. He has distilled his decades of experience into a unique framework called the Quantum Leap Technique, which transforms challenges into gains in minutes. Mark's a straight-shooting Texas farm boy who loves to spark breakthroughs when the chips are down. He says he has numerous clients, 2 to 4 times their business revenue within 3 to 6 months of working within his system. One person, in fact, went through his program, took their business from 30 million to 350 million, and then on to $1 billion in revenue. Together, we're going to find out his secret on this podcast. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here, sir.
So those are some really big claims, like fantastic. And so I want on this show to uncover some of the secrets. I know you're not going to give them away easily, but we're going to try and find out a little bit about, what you're doing to get such incredible results. But let's first start by just telling us a little bit about Encompass Life. Tell us about your business.
Yeah, so Encompass Life, I started it about 5 or 6 years ago, I guess now. I've owned numerous companies. I've owned construction companies. I've owned real estate investing companies. I've owned companies. I owned a raw food company for a while. So I had a lot of different business experience. However, something that's always stuck with me for about the last 35 years is consciousness and really developing how to really get the most out of human potential. I had a lot of sabotages in my life. And so to find these patterns and be able to shift them really quickly was something that was very passionate for me. So Encompass Life came out of 35 years of study and working with bunches of people. Even before I started Encompass Life as a coaching academy, I coach thousands of people already, and most of them were just all by word of mouth. I didn't even have a website. People would just hear what I did, and next thing I knew, I had clients all over the world just from word of mouth. So my clients were wondering, we're looking for how could they learn to do what I'm doing besides just being able to coach themselves, but also be able to become coaches in this modality we're working on here. So at the request of clients, I started Encompass Life. I've been training people for the last 6 years.
Interesting. So now when you referred earlier to sabotages, were those self-sabotages or were those saboteurs outside of you?
Self-sabotages. I mean, self-sabotages show up as saboteurs outside, right?
Right. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yes.
what?
And
Yeah.
self-sabotages or, there could be things I experienced in my own life or things that were passed down about life and in my lineage and the way we spoke about life and the way we spoke about how hard or easy something was. And we become um, hypnotized by it, basically, go into a state of agreement by things. Money doesn't grow on trees. You got to work really, really, really hard. Life's not fair. All those things. And um, like, or one of the things from Texas, life's like a turd on a bicycle tire. Same old crap keeps coming around again and again.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
So I've heard all these sayings over and over again, and they go into my consciousness, and they're cute little sayings, but and I didn't realize to the power of which all those things that I had heard I was going into agreement with.
So, what would you say, by way of your background, with all your business experience and experience in life? What was one of the biggest things you had to overcome in your either your businesses or your life that was like maybe an inflection point or
Yeah,
just totally
yeah. I
changed you?
About 15, 16 years ago, I had a construction company for about 30 years, 25 or 30 years at that time. I didn't like what I was doing. I thought that's just the way you live life. You do things you don't want to do, and you just do them out of obligation. And that's kind of how my dad displayed his way he lived life. I mean, I thought he was pretty miserable, and I began to realize I was living my dad's life about up to the age of about 50 or so. And I was doing coaching on the side and helping people quite a lot, mostly with health issues. But I was doing a lot of coaching, and so I did really desire to go into coaching full time. And I made some pretty good money, but no matter what I made, it wasn't enough. I was still miserable. Like the bank account wasn't filling me up. I
Hmm.
would make some money and then I'd lose some money. I'd go back and make some money and go back and lose some money and kind of caught in this quagmire. And I remember the day, November 13th, Friday, November the 13th, 2009. I a friend of mine had embezzled some money from me in my company. And I told my banker about it. And on Friday, November 13th, 2009, my employees go to the bank to cash their checks, and there's no money in the account.
Mm.
Unbeknownst to me, my bank has swept my account, called a line of credit due. It was a very dark time in my life. Here I was miserable. I wanted to get out of my business. I didn't know how to get out of my business. And now all of a sudden, my prayer of getting out is being answered, but in a
Mm.
very stressful manner.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I lost about 95% of my wealth in 120 days because I set up one cascade reaction after another after another.
Wow.
So I remade myself at the age of 50. And I began to really question what is it that I really love? What is it? Like I'd made money out of hate and anger and to show, to prove something, but no matter what I'd made out of that, it wasn't enough. So when I began to reinvent myself, I was going to do like I got to really love what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. Like why be stressed out, make a bunch of money and still be stressed out, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing everything based on what I loved. It took me a while to acclimate my body into believing that I could do that. As weird as that may sound, right?
No, that's a big mindset shift for a lot of people. If you've been working out of hate and anger to now work out of love,
Yeah,
uh, that's like switching from working from fear,
yeah,
uh, and or working from scarcity. And
yes,
now
sir.
suddenly the mindset is, no, I love what I do. I'm prosperous. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the
Yeah,
people I do it with.
yeah,
So, well, that sounds like a pretty big turnaround in your life. And um, so you were meeting all these goals financially, so it seemed,
right.
maybe in that business, and yet you were still feeling unfulfilled.
Yes, sir.
That's a pattern I think you have seen in some of your
Uh,
clients, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was a pattern I had from from childhood, stuff left over from some of the childhood things I went through, and I carried over that um, viewpoint on life into my adult things. No matter what I got, it wasn't enough. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I was a kind of a junkie. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it was weird. I mean, it may sound kind of weird, but you know,
Well,
chasing, 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 and still not satisfied. So yeah, it was a really miserable, living in misery while having a big house on a hill and boat, and a couple ranches, and all kind of things, and still not happy. Like the things didn't do it for me. I mean, they were nice to get,
right,
and then like, okay, that's it.
right. They're just things, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And so, so what do you think's really going on when people are chasing goals all the time, but feel unfulfilled? Is it something missing in their spirit?
Yeah, that is. And most people are looking at an external source, like an external result, in order to make them happy, or they they're manifesting from a place of want.
Hmm.
Manifesting from a place of want or manifesting from a place of already having are two very, very different things.
Right.
If somebody's manifesting from a place of want, the word want means the desire without ever having. So when somebody's manifesting from a place of want, there's anger, resentment, and frustration in where they currently are. And so when they produce a result, that result's still going to have that anger, resentment, and frustration in it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so they may produce X amount of dollars in the bank, and they'll go, oh, I still feel the same way. What's going on with that? So they're always looking for an external source for them to for them to take care of
Right.
that craving they have on the inside. And then they
So,
manifest it and go, well, that ain't it. And then like me go for a bigger goal. Well, that ain't it either.
right.
It's like a donkey with a carrot in front of them, and they never quite get to it, and after a while they go into resignation and burnout.
So I'm guessing that one of your secrets, how we get there, I'm not sure, but is to already act as if you have it,
Yeah,
as if
and
you are a larger business, a more successful business person, a better leader, a wealthy person inside, even
yeah,
though it isn't the trappings of the outside, it isn't how large your business is or how big your bank account is or how big your house is.
mm-mm. And before you even ask, before you even identify what it is,
Hmm.
you give yourself of having the feeling of having something great first before you ever even name what it is. You can't even begin to name what it is you really desire when you're in a state of sympathetic nervous system, when you're in a fight or flight.
Right.
And that's what's different than what we're doing here is very different than what other people are doing, as far as I can tell. Um, we give us before you ever identify your and rather than working with goals, I mean, we do produce goals. That's some really phenomenal goals. You share some of those at the beginning of the call.
Right.
But what we do here is we work with an outcome rather than a goal. A goal is based on an external source, like X amount of dollars, house on the hill, something like that.
Hmm.
An outcome is a first person personal experience of already having that thing. In other words,
Okay.
maybe somebody desires to have X amount of dollars in a bank, but
Right.
their real outcome is to finally hear their dad say, "I'm really proud of you." That's an outcome.
Hmm.
Like they may be trying to perform so they can gain their dad's respect, right? But what we do is find whatever that key is, have that person feel the outcome of it, and that catalyzes or basically it's like putting a supercharger on your manifestations capacity. Because when somebody does that, the feelings escalate. And what manifests are our thoughts, our words, and our feelings. So we make sure we get all those things in alignment before we ever begin to identify what it is we're manifesting.
So it sounds like our relationship to the world, to people, to life is more important and because that's what shifts the outcomes to become real rather
Excellent.
than focus on a goal, which is an external sort of wishful thinking, maybe.
Yeah, in order to feel something, have something, be something, whatever. And you said the magic word. You said we're changing our relationship to life. And the life we're changing our relationship is capital L life, not little myopic life.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever, a lot of what we do is based in spiritual law or quantum physics. It's the same thing.
Right.
And whatever somebody says about life is their relationship to God. Some people don't like talking about God, but whatever somebody will say, oh, I really love God. I really love, whatever. And well, how's your life going? Well, my life sucks. I don't have enough money. My kids and I are fighting, blah, blah, all these things. And I'm going, you said you love God. You said that you hate these things in your life. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth, folks. You got to find that alignment. You got to find that alignment there. And when somebody really, really changes their relationship to life, what we found here is all areas of their life change simultaneously and exponentially.
Okay. Let's take a couple of practical situations that business people find themselves in. I've had people come to me many times over past few decades. Their company is tapped out on growth. They can't seem to hit the $10 million revenue mark and get beyond it,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever that plateau is. Um, and they come to me looking for a growth strategy. And I'm historically giving them something external. Here are
Right.
some growth tools. Here's tools for improving your people, for improving um, your finding and hiring and selecting of the right people, and for executing on stuff.
Yeah.
What do you do
Yeah.
when
So
one's company's growth
yeah.
seems?
So we work with somebody on the inner, find out what's motivating them to get to produce the results they currently have.
Mhm.
And we also something that's different here is we get rid of all the positive and negative talk, good, bad, positive, and negative. All we work is with here's what are your actions and what are your results. And some
Okay.
people would say actions and consequences, but the word consequences has that little tinge of wrong to it. So there's there's four things that keep a person's a pattern into place. So like you could be working with somebody and giving them all the things that you have worked with on somebody else with that produce a success,
Right.
and these people they can even be doing your system and still not producing the results, right? So there's something going on in their beingness. We're a human being, not a human doing. So
Mhm.
there's a beingness inside that person that's creating a blockage. And there's four things that keep a pattern into place. Those four things are shame, blame, guilt, and hate. So if somebody's stuck at 10 million and they've been stuck there for a number of years, I guarantee you those four things are involved in there.
Okay. Shame, blame,
Blame, guilt,
hate, and guilt.
and guilt. Yes, sir.
And so I understand the value of, or I understand the challenges of shame and blame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just yesterday in a workshop where we're talking about intrinsic shaming versus extrinsic shaming.
Right.
So when someone's shaming you from the outside, like
Mm-hmm.
that's never a good culture in a company, right? And they're blaming you, they're scapegoating you. But intrinsic shame, if you learn from it and if it makes you stronger, that the point of the person in the workshop was communicating was that can be good. That's internal drive. But
Yeah, I mean,
maybe let's
all
talk
these
about more
things.
about that and talk about hate and guilt a little bit so I understand, like,
Yeah,
why
and
would
all
someone?
these things, guilt and hate and all those things too. It's not whether they're good, bad, right, or wrong. It's when it's when people are stuck into it. Though the guilt is another way, like saying embarrassment. So if somebody
Okay.
feels really guilty about something and they're embarrassed, they don't want to talk about it. They're trying to hide it from everybody. So they're putting this, you know, on the inside they could be crumbling, but on the outside is they're projecting this false persona that they don't want
Right.
anybody to know about. They have all this stuff inside themselves. So
Right.
that guilt embarrassment thing in other words, people have to get real about where they are.
Yeah, no, that
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense. And I can see it in a client of mine that stuck at a plateau and feeling a lot of probably shame and guilt, embarrassment about it. And
Mhm.
but on the external world, they're not talking about it. They're not even talking about it within the company. They're not
Yeah.
developing their people and talking about, you know, we're
Yep.
committed to growing all of us and making this change here.
Yep.
We've got
And most of those, most likely that conversation that guy has about guilt has been with him since he was a kid and got scolded,
mm-hmm. So,
got into trouble for something he didn't do. Something there's gonna be some trauma that happened as a kid, and um, when well, here's one of our secret things, our special sauces. When a trauma occurs as a kid, and the person, um, what they do is they create a lot of "I am not" statements to survive that trauma.
okay. Give
Okay,
us
like I shouldn't have like a lot of "not" statements. My parents shouldn't have been this way. I didn't mean to do that. I'm not good enough. I'm just not smart enough. I can't do anything right. And they surround that trauma with a whole bunch of "not" statements, N.O.T. statements.
mm-hmm.
And once they create an N.O.T. statement, one of the side effects of that, or one of the effects of that, is the person has a high level of anxiety. The higher the percentage of "nots" a person speaks, the higher the level of anxiety they're experiencing in their life. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, fight and flight.
Right.
And it's always a sign of suppressed anger and resentment. When somebody's speaking that way, you're going to start to notice it. Now that I'm sharing it with you, you're going to start noticing how many people speak "not" statements, and notice the feeling you're getting with it.
Yeah, of course. The
Yep.
mind has no picture for not. They just hear the other words associated with it. Like,
Yeah, and there's a feeling associated with it. Stanford
right.
did a study, and they said complaint and damages the neurons in the brain. Well, anytime somebody is speaking the word "not," unless they're using it as a comparison, I don't like chocolate, I do like vanilla. What
Mm-hmm.
that is actually they're actually making a complaint, and they're stupefying themselves, and it getting the brain to fire in the same neurological pattern again and again and again. So that's all they can see is what's wrong, and and their subconscious begins to only see what's wrong and also project that wrongness onto this wonderful holographic world we live in. So we can work with people to change their speech patterns over time, or we have a system here where they can change their speech patterns in a matter of minutes. Most of the time, they're not even, I'm going to say they're not even aware that they're doing it. It happens automatically, and we have to call their attention to their change in speech pattern for them to realize what they just did.
So you're saying that basically you can reduce people's reactivity to stimulus,
Yeah.
which shows up as complaints, knots, negative, and provide them with some effective or super actions that gets them to change and turn things around a little bit. Is that
Turn things around dramatically in a
okay?
matter of minutes.
Okay, got it. So what is some of the, so you say it's in a matter of minutes. Is it through pattern repetition of a different pattern of drowning out the old pattern, replacing it with a new pattern? I mean,
Depends. There's going to be um, to change that initial trauma. Most people talk about you have to forgive something to be able to move on from it. I'm sure you've
mhm,
heard that before.
sure.
Well, forgiveness kind of gets a person back to where, yeah, it's okay. There's we do one step further here, and the person actually has to thank the experience and actually find the blessing in the experience. Until they can actually find the blessing in the experience and be grateful for it, nothing really shifts.
So grateful for the experience of what they're currently manifesting, which is this negative, not reactivity behavior.
Yeah, where that pattern began to show up. So I worked with some. I'll give you an example. I worked with a lady who she's an attorney, would get her business to a certain level of glass ceiling, blow it up, and go back down and build it all back up again, hit the glass ceiling again, blow it up, go back down again. Same thing in a relationship. Get to a certain point, blow them up, go back down. So started working with her, and one thing is she had had a sexual assault in her childhood. what had happened in the sexual assault, her body actually began to respond to the touch of it. This may sound a little weird, but she knew it was wrong. She knew she shouldn't be doing it, knew it shouldn't be happening, but her body responded, was stimulated by it. So one of the things as she was talking about this, she said, I feel guilty about feeling good.
Mm,
So that was
right.
programmed in her at that moment.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So she would get to a certain level, she'd start to feel good, blow it up. Relationships, business, everything. I worked with her. I mean, really, it happened very quickly. I probably worked with her maybe 2 or 3 times. And then um, she came to a class I did probably 4 or 5 months after we worked together for those 3 times. And within that 4 or 5 months, her business has tripled. She had a brand new relationship that was way different than anything she had had before.
Mm.
And she goes, as weird as this sounds, I had to give myself permission to really enjoy my life, to make it okay to feel good.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, all these things are so programmed in, and we have a system we can find this subterfuge programming in a matter of seconds most of the time.
Something that therapists spend
Oh
years
yeah, yeah, yes
with
sir,
people on the couch.
yeah,
So the claims that I put forth that you shared with me in the early part of your bio, in the early part of the show, in the end of your bio, um, are pretty significant. And I imagine you get pushback from people who haven't
don't
had the
believe,
experience. They don't believe it.
yeah,
They don't believe that you can double or triple your revenue in 3 to 6 months, or, you know, um, so it's not part of their view that it's possible.
great.
How do you
Have fun.
overcome that? Hmm?
That's their deal. Their deal. Stay where you are. Don't believe it. That's fine. We got plenty of people who do,
Right,
and I've worked with people who can.
right,
I mean, have enough pain. A lot of times, people have to get really, really painful before they'll do what we're doing.
right.
A lot of modalities talk about you got to be vulnerable. I'm sure you've heard that before, right?
Sure.
Drop the vulnerability. Well, we got to do this system. It takes courage to do what we're doing here.
Okay.
You got to touch the things you don't want to touch, do the things you don't want to do, and I guarantee you, your life's going to change. On the other,
So you're saying
your
it's hard,
thriving life is on
right?
the other side of what you don't want to do.
So you're saying it's hard, but maybe hard isn't even the right word. It's
Now,
challenging.
what's
It.
what's really the difference is the mind will tell everybody it's really, really hard.
Hmm.
Once people do it, we'd like to go back to where you were. Oh hell no, that was hard. The
Right.
mind, the little limiting self, this is going to be really hard. Going to take it's going to take courage to do what you're doing here, what we do here. And where you find your courage, Jonathan? Right in the moment of fear. That's where
Yeah.
you find courage.
Yeah. Well, so this is what keeps people repeating the same patterns over and over again, is that they
And they hate them.
are afraid to be in the uncomfortable area for the.
Or that's, there's another, a lot of people talk about you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Hmm.
Um, we're very specific with language. You can probably tell we use language a little different way here. Most people, I say people are in a familiar zone, not a comfort zone.
Hmm.
And because I've seen people who are extremely miserable, they're not comfortable there, but they're familiar with it. But
Right.
if you use the word comfort, that word comfort has a way to sedate that person.
Right. Right.
So wow, you're this is what you're familiar with. Yeah, this is what. Oh yeah, that's right.
Wow.
This is what I'm not comfortable with, but I'm familiar with it. So wow, you're familiar with being miserable. You're familiar with being in fight or flight. You're familiar with not being able to make payroll, with having to scrimp and save and worry about money. That's what you're familiar with.
Hmm.
But
You know,
it's not what you're comfortable with. It's what you're familiar
I
with.
agree with you. And let me just state a couple of more practical examples. So we talked about the company that stalled at growth. And then I've had numerous times over my 30 years of consulting coaching where people say, I just can't find good people, or I can't find someone who's good enough to replace me in, let's say, estimating in their construction business because they think that they're the only one who know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, there's a lot of limiting beliefs
Mm-hmm.
that people have,
Yes,
and
sir.
that I can even see in myself, and just
Yeah.
that you keep repeating these patterns over and over because it's self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe it's so, it
Yes, sir.
becomes so, and then your belief is reaffirmed.
Yeah. And if somebody has that particular set of results showing up, so they came from a childhood where they didn't feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a core belief of, I'm not supported. So when somebody has, I'm not supported as their core belief, and by the way, that's what I had as well. So I know this one well. I got the t-shirts on it. So
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I would hire people who couldn't support me,
Mm-hmm.
or I would hire people who could, and then I'd belittle them until they'd give up.
Mm.
And here I really want to be supported, but remember the word want means desire without ever having. So the
Right.
more I wanted it, the more I pushed it away. And when I got into this system, I was like, oh my God, I've been living this way for 50 years, and it's like all of a sudden woke up.
So so let's talk about this quantum leap technique. Like, what's the fastest way to reduce stress and anxiety and have ever increasing levels of confidence and ease?
Yeah. So the quantum leap is rather than, um, I'm back up. We our language can create our own hell. In other words, life's not fair. I can't do anything right. Um, it's like a dog eat dog world, and I'm wearing melt bone underwear. Whatever, right? All these little sayings you have, right?
Okay.
And that's hell when you're talking when you have that self beat up like that going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's there's purgatory, which is anything with an ing word. I'm working on it. I'm getting better. I'm really trying to. So anything with ing is purgatory. But we can language ourselves straight into our own nirvana, heaven or nirvana, by speaking what we really love. And rather than working on something over a period of time, now that I already have it, now that I already did it, now that I already spent 5 years doing this, what's finally new and different for me? And you give yourself the feeling of having already done it before you ever do it. And rather than trying to figure out the steps you take to get there, once you give yourself the feeling of it, you remember the steps you took.
So this is different than positive mental attitude, affirmations.
Way different.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's way different. Even the meditation. We've had people coming from Dispenza and some of the other, especially from Dispenza, who have been meditating for years, and that they would go spend time to get into a state of that meditative state of peace.
Yeah.
And what they're saying, and I've done some of this stuff as well, and it's great stuff, by the way, love it. And there's a way to live in that space all the time. Is able to live in this place where the answers come straight through you, but you have to get out of this right wrong duality world to be able to have this unity consciousness, which is basically what meditation is producing.
Right.
So we're languaging it in such a way where we're just living in it. All the issues in life, all the struggles, all the states of non-ease come from the belief in separation. In other words, making life wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When we make something wrong, the pituitary gland produces the chemicals for wisdom and intuition. When somebody's making a judgment and making something wrong, the pituitary gland quits producing that chemical and the person stays in fight or flight. They're living in a state of pain. They can't see the purpose of the pain. And all they do is they try to get out of it. They're trying to run from it, which doesn't work. the gold is in the pain, but you got to turn and go into it rather than trying to get out of it and run from it.
It sounds like a polarity model for change is to recognize that the extricated part of yourself, maybe the part in someone else that you really don't like, is a projected part of you
No,
that
sir.
you actually cut off, you've rejected, and that
Yep.
you're suggesting that you need to almost like make friends, reconcile with
Embrace
that,
it. Get a
embrace it,
PhD in it.
and get to really know it, hug
Yeah,
it,
get to really know it.
and then only then, like, can you let it go and transform through that
Yeah.
experience into the next place that you want to be. It's
Yeah.
um,
Everybody has all these pieces inside themselves.
mhm,
If they deny them, those pieces own them. You got to admit you have it inside you. Find out what it's cost you in your life. Find out what the payoff is that's producing your life,
right.
and get a PhD in it. So if it comes up, you already have, you know what it's about, and know your way through it. You know, the most important time to talk about being positive, right?
Mhm,
It's easy to be positive when everything's going great.
right.
Oh, I miss everything. Oh my God, Jonathan, things are so great in my life right now. Let me tell you about it, you know.
That,
But when you're really, really changing your life, is if something goes up, if something happens, what do you handle? How do you handle a kerfluffle? And imagine if you were had 100 times greater love and wealth in your life, and an
mhm,
unexpected bill came up. How would you handle the unexpected bill? Well, it'd be like a mosquito. Bink. Thank you very much for sharing.
right.
And right, so you got to become that character of how do you handle kerfluffles at that new stage,
Okay.
and you become that person. You're a human, become a human becoming.
Gotcha. So business owners come to me and executives come to me because they want to get, let's say maybe they want to get a breakthrough. They want results in the area of maybe profits or better teamwork, employee morale. Um, what's what is the method that you use to get them to help them to learn how to get these breakthrough results? It's this quantum leap technique. What does it
Yeah,
look like actually?
well,
What's
I share with you a little bit. We're going to discover what that person does themselves.
hmm
All coaching is all coaching is going to be self coaching.
hmm
So we're going to find out what's what triggers that person has. Where do
hmm
those triggers come from?
hmm
What's what are they what are they desiring to create in their life? What are they desiring to create in their business? Most people go profitable business. Okay, what do you mean by that? You got to get specific.
right.
There's no, you got to have specific goals. You got to get where everybody gets along with each other. What do you mean by that? What are the specific goals? And if most people live in definitions, what we do here, we work in outcomes and observable actions. What are the observable actions? What are the observable results? Not definitions, not profitable, not everybody gets along, but what is it truly that you desire?
What
Because when somebody begins to speak with specificity, when people speak with specificity, it produces a feeling inside their body. It's going to get really emotional for them. If they can't produce that feeling, they're going to have a really tough time manifesting that result, that outcome. If they can't produce that feeling, there's something else already stuck in their emotional body that requires to be dealt with before that person can produce that feeling.
Hmm.
So we find all those little nuances and shift them. And it can happen really, really quickly, depending on the willingness of the individual.
But do you find that business owners or leaders or executives, they have a difficult time expressing what it feels like to have maybe greater employee morale or greater employer engagement, or feel like, what does it feel like to have more profits? I mean, um,
No, I mean some people have a tougher time than others, but I wouldn't put it as business owners, categorize it as business owners. It,
right.
it comes across in all areas of life. Some people get to get it really quickly. Some people it may take a little bit longer, depending on their willingness to follow the system.
Right.
Some, I have noticed some people who have a high degree of success can be a little more attached to their stories and their identity than people who are looking to achieve a high level of success. So, somebody can do really well in business and maybe the relationships suck.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want to change themselves because they're afraid they're going to lose money if they make changes in themselves. So there's generally a complementary factor that's holding that person back. So we find out what those are and have that person shift.
So it's an ego identity based conflict that's
Yeah.
intrapersonal, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah. The toughest thing for people to give up is their excuses.
Yeah.
I mean, I practiced them before. Going to go be late for an appointment, and yeah, it was a train, and then this is practice my excuses before I ever got to an appointment.
Right.
Like, what am I doing, man?
So some of what you're describing sounds rooted in programs that I'm familiar with. Not that I went through them necessarily, but the S program, which then became Landmark Forum and Education, and um, transpersonal psychology. You talked about quantum physics. I was thinking often in this interview about a movie was called What the Bleep Do You Know, which was
Yeah,
all
yeah.
about quantum
Down the
physics,
rabbit hole.
down the rabbit hole. Just and that what's going on outside and the inside, that we're all connected, that
Yes, sir.
there's like no accidents. And it's about in aligning the disconnected parts of ourself, or the parts that we don't realize are also, a reality that we're creating. Am I getting some of this right?
Sort of. By the way, I did Landmark and those programs as well. Those were very mental compared to what we're doing here.
Okay.
Ours is more feeling. 80% of our manifestations are based on feeling.
Right. So you're starting with getting the emotional body to
Yeah.
line up with a different experience than the one they're currently experiencing.
Yeah. Well, we're changing thought, but the way we're changing thought is we first have the person's body begins to calm down. Give yourself the feeling of what's happening in your body, not your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and in your body. Oh, my shoulders are dropped. I'm finally breathing. I mean, most people don't even know what breathing is, dude.
Right. I know, right?
It's
I
like,
know.
or they're breathing all chest, no belly. The move
Right.
from a chest breath to a belly breath is a very different
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
So get in your body first. If you're going to manifest something from this body, be in your body. And then once a person begins to get in their body, goes into parasympathetic, then thoughts will change automatically. Instead of I used to try to change my thoughts and think positive instead of negative. It's like
Yeah.
herding cats, dude.
Right. Nothing happened, right?
Oh my God. I was like, one more thing to do. Oh, one more
Right.
thing to worry about.
Right. Keep your list on the wall. Look at it, all the things you need to tell yourself that,
Yeah.
that are
And
positive.
what we're doing here is like riding a bicycle. Whenever, no one can teach somebody how to ride a bike. They can help you find balance on the bicycle, but you have to find balance for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that balance becomes an embodied sensation, then the body will will automatically go to it without the conscious mind operating. Right. So the same thing here. We're going to the body first, having the sensation come into the body. Oh, this is what you choose me to run on, and the person's body will begin to go to this new level of parasympathetic relaxation. Most of the time when people do our classes, they said this is the most relaxed I've ever been in my life, and most likely it's going to be the most relaxed anybody has ever been in your lineage.
Mm.
But now they have a benchmark. Now they got a benchmark in their body. Cool. Once they have that benchmark, that becomes a new foundation. We can continuously build on it.
Well, Mark, I think we certainly whet the appetite of our listeners. So let's tell them a little bit about like how do they learn more about Encompass Life, Mark Scherer? Where do they go, and what will they expect to find? Are they just classes? Are they classes and one-on-one? Is it? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, most everything we do are on our classes. I lead some live in-person classes. I have a class called From How to Wow,
Mm-hmm.
which most people, great for business people because most people will have a great idea and they get stuck in the monkey mind of how am I going to implement it. So
Right.
this produces a breakthrough result in that very, very quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of our key classes. We have a class called the Basics. That's an online class led by one of my coaches, um, and we have a whole school of life coaching and leadership development. It takes about a year to go through everything, but there are modules you can take to whatever degree of competency you choose to have. Um, and our website is in www.encompasslife.com. And my email is mark@encompasslife. If you like what we're doing here, send me an email and write down Jonathan or in the email in the heading, and I'll know Jonathan sent you, and we'll take special great care of you.
Sounds good. So, all right. So interesting conversation today. If you want to know more, go to Encompass Life, email Mark with a K, M-A-R-K, at encompasslife.com. Reference Jonathan Goldhill or Disruptive Successor, and he'll know a little bit more context of what this call was all about. Mark, it was great having you on the show. Certainly interesting. If you can watch this on YouTube, you get a great visual background behind Mark. Um, just shooting stuff coming out of his head there. Um, Mark, it was
Thank,
really a wonderful conversation, and I enjoy it, and I look forward to learning and hearing more about you in the future.
thank you, sir. Thanks, Jonathan, for having me on. Really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Folks,
Thank
you
you.
know the drill. Share this podcast with others, um, and give us a good rating on your podcast listening application of choice. And of course, stay tuned for future episodes of the Disruptive Successor Show. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.